So when I came up with the inspiration to start recording and sharing these videos about my experiences or experiences of those in the Black community, specifically from the US, I had a lot of topics that I wanted to talk about just because I think oftentimes when something doesn't personally affect us, we don't understand the layers and the gravity of what the people who are affected experience on a day-to-day basis. And instead of talking about what I had planned to talk about this week, I'm going to share my experience of what happened to me on Monday. So I am living in Spain, autonomous community in the Canaries, but still it's Spain. And on Monday night, I went out to dinner with my roommate, had the best time, like laughing, drinking, eating, loved it. We took the bus back home. The bus driver did not stop at our stop despite multiple people requesting the stop. And the stops aren't very close together. So he passed our stop and stopped at the next one, which was like a 40-minute walk back to our house. My roommate had to go to the bathroom, so she sped up to go ahead of me, which left me outside by myself at like 12:30 at night, which is fine. Like, the community is very safe. That wasn't a concern of mine, but I still would have preferred not to be alone by myself at night. So I'm walking, I'm maybe 15 minutes away from my house, and a police SUV drives past me and backs up. And they ask me in Spanish, everything is in Spanish, where are you going? And I said, I'm going home. And a man is in a driver's seat and there's a woman in the passenger seat, and the man gets out and he comes up to me and he's like, yeah, but where do you live? And I told him the street, and he's like, yeah, but what's the number? And I give him the number, and I'm like, why did you stop me? I'm just walking down the street. I'm not carrying anything suspicious. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't wobbling. They also didn't ask me if I needed help or if I was okay. They just immediately were like, who are you and where are you going? And there were other people in the street as well. And I'm looking around. I'm like, are you going to ask all of these other people where they're going? And the guy is asking me when I got here. He's asking for my passport, which I have like a really small purse. I went out for drinks. Like, I didn't bring like my whole array of documentation. And I always have a photo of my passport on my phone. So I'm like, here's my passport to show you like who I am. And he's like, no, I need your actual physical passport to see when you enter the country. I said, it's not going to show you when I enter the country because I didn't go through passport control. I came here from Berlin. So what do we do now? And he's like, well, where's your NIE, which is like basically your identification number. And I show him a photo of this because the NIE is printed on a piece of paper. So like, if this paper gets wet or tears in my bag, then I have to go and get it replaced. So I also have a photo of this. I show it to him. He's like, no, I need the physical copy. I'm like, okay, man, but I'm doing my best. I'm telling you, I don't have them on me. So I have a photo of them. Like, what do you need from me right now? Because I'm providing you my identification. I'm not doing anything suspicious. Like, why did you stop me? And they're like, yeah, but we just need to know like who you are and what you're doing here. And I'm like, I live here. Like, I don't know what else you want me to tell you. So the guy, I give him my passport card because it's small enough to fit in my purse. He takes it. He starts calling someone. And I ask the woman. The woman is like completely silent the entire time. I'm like, who is he calling? She's like, oh, he's calling to make sure that like there's nothing wrong with you being here. There's no issues with you being here. I'm like, okay, right? And I just keep looking at the back of their cop car, and I think like I'm getting so anxious because I'm like, what if they tell me to get in their cop car? Because as a non-Spanish citizen, any trouble I get into can jeopardize me staying in this country. And I'm like, I'm so confused also because I don't understand why they stopped me. I wasn't doing anything. I'm just walking down the street. And the guy, obviously, there's no issue with me being here, so he gives me my passport card back. And then he's like, do you have drugs on you? And I was like, why would you ask me that question? Like, every person that you stop to, you ask them if they have drugs on them? I'm like, no. And the guy's like, well, they're asking my roommate's name. They're asking again, repeatedly asking me the same questions over and over again, I guess trying to catch me in a lie. They're asking me again and again and again where I live, what floor I live on, what's the name of the building. I told them I was like working with a realtor. They wanted to know her name, her company name. I'm like, this seems very excessive for a person walking down the street. I completely understand that like you want to make sure that I'm not being involved in any criminal activity, but I gave you no suspicion to stop me. And all of this is very reminiscent of exactly what happened with the origination of the police, especially in the United States. The police were created to be slave catchers. So slaves were freed. However, the police were allowed to stop them for any reason. You could be arrested for the smallest, not even crime, just being in the wrong place. Your existence was always questioned. When you were a slave and you were free, you always had to have your documentation on you to show that you were a freed slave. And even then, it didn't keep you from being detained and possibly put back into slavery. And the police asking me all of these questions, like essentially asking me to justify my existence in a space, is something that sadly Black people have had to deal with. And we've seen a lot of videos of like Black people, the two guys or however many guys were in a WeWork, and there was a gym included in their membership, and this white man questions them like, you're not supposed to be here. I just saw a video of a guy fishing, just like at a lake with two of his friends. He lived in the community, and a white woman was like taking photos of his car, questioning him where he lived. She wanted to know his name. Like, there's this assumption that we Black people don't belong in a place. And then you add to that this stereotype, this assumption that we have drugs on us, we're doing something criminal. And I moved away from the United States to limit my exposure, limit my chances of being questioned like this and stopped like this. And there's no place that Black people can exist without being questioned, without someone asking, where are you from? Oh, really? Well, who do you know here? Do you live in this neighborhood? Do you live around here? Like, why are you here? Why are you in this space? And this goes along with the historical teachings, implementations of whiteness being centered. So as a white person, very rarely are you questioned about why you are in a space. You don't have to justify your existence in a space. Even if you travel to other countries, you're given the benefit of the doubt. The Spanish government is bending over backwards, jeopardizing an increase in coronavirus cases just so they can have British tourists here. They want them so badly. Instead of, reaching out and marketing to and extending some sort of incentives from people from other countries, no, they want British people back badly to salvage the tourism. But it's like, anyone can come here and be a tourist. Like, why don't you reach out to other countries, other demographics? Why is it only the British? And there's this usually like first initial response that a lot of non-people of color will present when I share my experience of this being stopped by the police or any kind of microaggression I experienced in Berlin a lot, and usually from white women. It's this general concept of being allowed to take up space, not being your space, not being questioned, not being limited, not being restricted. And when I was on public transport, or if I was waiting for the tram in Berlin, there would be so much space. But usually white women would like be very close to me, almost like pushing me out of the way. If I'm standing by the door, not in the way of the door opening probably on a side where the door will not ever open for the duration of the car ride, a woman would come and stand and put her arm in my face. And I'm like, there's so much space. Why do you have to come into my space? To me, it seems like you, one, are not acknowledging my existence, or two, you are trying to subliminally tell me that I should not be taking up this space. This space is for you. And I would explain this to a friend, and he would say, yeah, but this happens to everyone. Like, you shouldn't take it personally. And there's this quick knee-jerk reaction to minimize the trauma, the emotional, psychological effect that these experiences that we have on a daily basis, and the history of these experiences. Of course, in every situation, I can't say that this person is being aggressive towards me because of my race. These cops didn't stop me because of my race. But I will never be able to have that as my first assumption. I can never, ever, ever think this isn't because of my race. And as a white person, that's not your first assumption. If someone puts their arm in your way, you just think like, oh, they're rude, or oh, like this was unintentional. I will never be able to have that assumption. I always have to come from a place of, what is the motivation behind this person treating me this way, especially when I'm the only person of color in this space, and they choose to come into my space. They choose to question me about where I'm going and who I am and how I got here and why I'm here. And while a lot of people in Europe think like, I mean, the people in the United States thought this prior to a couple of weeks ago, but like, oh, race is not an issue here. But these countries historically have colonized dozens and dozens and dozens of other countries on multiple continents. Spain colonized almost a dozen countries in South America and Latin America. They are still very racist in this country. Policing is built on a racist system. It doesn't matter what country you're in. There's this belief, this historical belief. You just have to think about like what these systems are built on and what is taught in these systems. But there's this belief that people of color are less. You see it with the comments that people make. Black people, people from Middle Eastern countries, even people from Asian countries with the coronavirus outbreak. You see how white people center themselves in a situation and make everyone else feel like the outsider, which is why in the US, a lot of people have advocated against not using minorities, because what you're insinuating is that people of color are less than the majority, despite how many of them exist in any given space. The center of the universe was perceived to be white people, by their own design, of course. But the trauma of seeing Black people murdered by police just for any daily activity that you should be able to do, go for a jog, carry a toy gun, have a car accident, be in your grandmother's backyard, be a registered gun owner with a license to carry, selling loose cigarettes, being questioned for the validity of the currency that you're using in a shop. Like, none of these things should warrant the death penalty. However, as we have seen in the United States, they have resulted in the death of these people's lives. So anytime that I see a police officer, I mean, I was raised to think like the police are there to help us. Now, whenever I see them as a threat. And in this situation, I felt threatened. I felt questioned because I was Black. And not even like question in a friendly way, question in an aggressive way. in the middle of the night as a woman by myself. Like, there was no concern extended to me walking alone by myself at night. It was just making me feel like I needed to justify my existence in this space. When I see police, I see violence, I see racism, I see the power that they are given over people's lives. You could be, like, there are people in prison now serving years and years of sentences for nonviolent drug offenses. Sentencing given at a much higher, much more stern rate than the same exact offense for their white counterparts. And for anyone whose initial thought process is to say, like, no, this could have happened to anyone. Before this happened to me, being stopped by the police here, this guy was telling me how racist the police are here. They stop black people all the time. If you look like you're from a poor socioeconomic class, they will stop you. But when the guy said this, I was like, well, it's not the US. Can't be that bad, right? I was on the bus and there was a guy sitting behind me. I didn't even notice him. And at a stop, 2 police officers get on at each door with a police dog. The dog doesn't bark. The dog doesn't do anything. The dog's chilling, having the best time. And the police officer goes directly to the guy behind me and he was like, what's in your bag? And the guy's like so scared. He's like, what? The guy's like, what's in your bag? Get off the bus. They just take his bag, get off the bus and start searching him. Like, has this happened to you? If not, just be mindful of the experiences that people of color are going through. Why they're so angry still, like why you're still seeing content, why it's not ending, because we're just exhausted. It's been so many years of this kind of treatment and it has to stop. Like, we're all human, we're all equal. I mean, the law even says it, but we don't feel it. But unfortunately, I just feel like even in the most liberal, progressive, multicultural places, there's no way to escape the potential for prejudice or for discrimination, because people treat black people differently. And this is ingrained in us. And by us, I mean all, like everyone. It's ingrained in us from what we're taught, what we see, what we hear. And I'm really grateful for people who are now doing their best to educate themselves and change their behavior and change their way of thinking, and hopefully do the same with the people around them and the people in their community. So, thank you. Hopefully this video sparked some thoughts and encourages some sympathy, because you just don't know, like, the kind of stuff that people are going through every day, the stuff that they have to carry and smile through and function, dealing with like really heavy, traumatizing, life-threatening stuff. All right, see you next time.